Hey BookTube, I'm back for another video. In this video, as you can see, is sort of different. I'm in my other location, and I've got my camera positioned differently than I usually do. Usually, these bookcases here are in front, and then the bookcase that I'm filming on now uh, is in the background. But there's a reason why I'm doing this, and the reason why I'm so low to the ground is because I would like to start a bookshelf tour. I did begin one at the beginning of the year, I believe, or maybe it was the end of last year, somewhere like that. But that was way before I completely reorganized my entire uh, bookcases, because I added two big, massive bookcases and moved a lot of books around and reorganized them all. So, and I never did actually get through a large chunk of my library in that previous iteration of my bookshelf tour. I only got through maybe about a shelf, and I had at least two other shelves to go off of, plus, um, well, maybe like two and a half other shelves or whatever. But anyways, I didn't get even to a lot of my nonfiction, and I want to show that off. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to start at the very bottom of this bookcase where I have all my nonfiction, and then I'll be just move up. Because I believe all of this here, except for the very top where I have a lot of Penguin Classics, where it's a mixture of nonfiction and fiction. So I figured I'd start with these books here that I have not shown before. Some of them you might recognize from book hauls, but not all of them are from book hauls, um, or at least from recent book hauls. Going back on my channel, you might be able to find a lot of these because this is a very new shelf. It's well, the whole shelf is basically modern history, so around the 20th century or in the 19th century moving onward, except for some works that are all encompassing, like that are like modern histories that go from like 1500 to the modern age. There's a few of those here too. But I'll have them on one shelf, and the other common theme is that I have not read any of these books because this interest in history is fairly new, at least in this period of history. It's fairly new for me, so I have not dipped in on any of these books, but they're all on subjects that are very interesting and that I hope to become more acquainted with. So, with that throat clearing away, I'll start showing you the books. So, as always with my bookshelves, there's always books, as you can see on behind here. There's always books stacked in front. Sometimes there's books stacked on top, but there's none here. But then we can actually get to the proper shelf. So I'll show those. I'll go from right to left. So these are all in front right now. This is this is a paperback of Delivered from Evil by Robert Leckie, and it's called or subtitle is The Saga of World War II. So it's a World War II history with a beautiful um, wraparound cover illustration. I love that. I mean, it's not beautiful in the sense of what actually happened, and you got some infamous figures on the cover here, but beautiful as in it's got original artwork on this work of history, which you don't usually get all that much anymore. And I'm very much looking forward to this. I don't have a whole lot of books on World War II, usually because the subject is so daunting that it completely just leaves my mind. I'm usually much more interested in history before and after wars, not actually on the war itself. But I've heard good things about this book, so uh, if I'm gonna read a little bit on the World War or World War II, I might as well have this one here. Um, then we come to a book that was actually assigned for me as a textbook in university. This is Europe, Crisis and Conflict. It's got two authors here. It's Robin W. Winks and R.J.Q. Adams. And then the time frame here is 1890 to 1945. And it's just a short thing, but it's oversized. And actually, I could show you it is oversized, as you can see. And I didn't actually end up reading the whole thing. I only read probably a quarter of this book because that same class had another textbook. and that textbook was a lot more comprehensive. And I didn't have to read that entire textbook either, and I felt like I could go off of that other textbook a lot better. So it was kind of weird having two textbooks that cover roughly the same period. So I only read about a quarter of this, but I have it here uh, because I wouldn't mind going through it at some point. Because it is that during that period, 1890 to 1945, where it'll certainly be covering World War One and World War Two, and then all the things leading up to it and the aftermath, except for maybe the aftermath of World War Two, because it only ends in 1945. So, um, yeah, just a little textbook there. And then we come to a book that looks like it could be assigned as a textbook, but I found it used, and I usually like picking up textbooks when I find them used, if they're on subjects that interest me, and they're not like books with 7 different authors and 10 editions or something. So this one actually looks like a book, even though it can be used as a textbook, and it's just a book on Europe from 1715 to 1919, so after World War One. And the subtitle here is From Enlightenment to World War, and it's by Shirley Ellison Rosler and Rennie Miklos. And kind of hard with that glare there, because it is a glossy cover here. And the publisher is Rowman and Littlefield, which is a very expensive publisher, like academic publisher, where you can almost never find any of their books for anything less than like $50 or more. They're very much a scholarly press, even if they're not a university press. So just a book covering a huge time frame, and I kind of like books like that. And this one focuses purely on that time frame in Europe. So then we come to another book on Europe. This is kind of much more of the packaging of a textbook. This is the history of modern Europe, and it has this is volume two, and it's the third edition, and it's from the French Revolution to the present, and it's by John Marinan, just the one author here, but this is actually the second edition of a two-volume history. Volume one is from the French goes I think it goes up to the French Revolution, but I don't actually know where the beginning is. I think it would probably be right after the medieval period, I would assume, but I don't know that for sure. But I'm fine with just having the second or the second volume here, even though it would be nice to have the full edition. Um, I'm okay with uh, having a textbook on the second edition, because I think this will be able to stand up on its own, if I'm not mistaken. And then we move on to a history of the Cold War. This is the Cold War, a world history, and it's by Odd R.N. Westad. Odd R.N. Westad. And it's one of those Penguin orange spine paperbacks of nonfiction, which I really do like them. They're smaller, and they're really nice to hold. They're well. I like the binding and the font and just the way they flop around. I really do like these these Penguin orange spine books. I don't have a whole lot of them. I think this might be maybe the second or third that I have, because they are UK specific. But yeah, this is very nice to hold. And about the book itself, I really do like that it's a world history of the Cold War. This is the another example of me being more interested in after the World War and that period there. So then we come to the Finland Station by Edmund Wilson. To the Finland Station by Edmund Wilson. Forward by Louis Menand. And this is the only New York Review of Books classic that I have, or not classic, but edition that I have. New York Review of Books, I think. And yeah, it's a nice little edition. It's been read before because it's got some spine creases, but it's seems to be some kind of account of um, the Russians and their role in Finland or something. I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't seem to be well defined what I'm going to actually encounter in here. Other than that, I've heard of the author before, and I wanted to give this book a try. Then we come to an actual battle history. This is the Battle of Stalingrad. This is another World War II history book. And it says The Fateful Siege, 1942 to 1943, and it's by Antony Beevor. So I had to read a Richard Overy's book on called Russia's War. I had to read that for a class. It's not on this shelf because it's actually too small. It's just a small paperback, and it wouldn't actually fit on this shelf, I don't think. Um, but I had to read it for a class and had to write an essay on it. And that actually really interested me a lot because it gave me a different perspective on the war that you don't usually get taught when you're, say, in high school or something. Because it focuses on the conflict between Russia and Germany, and the Battle of Stalingrad plays a big part in that, and in that story when you focus on World War II through the eyes of Russia, because it was basically a complete slaughter, but yet um, it was a pivotal battle in that conflict. And so this is Antony Beevor's subject on that war alone, or not, on that battle alone. Um, and I think this would be a great primer too for the Vasily Grossman um, two fiction books that he wrote based on this conflict. So yeah, the first book is Stalingrad, which only recently came out within the past probably 8 years in an English translation, even though it was written in the 60s, I believe. And then he has his much more famous and more well-known book, which is sort of like a sequel, Life and Fate, which I believe also focuses on Stalingrad, or maybe it's just after that. I'm not entirely sure. But I think this would be a good way to just booster myself on that history before I end up diving into those novels. And then we come to one of the most famous nonfiction books on World War II. This is Bloodlands by Timothy Snyder. Europe between Hitler and Stalin. And I'm not sure entirely what I'm going to encounter in this because that's an extremely vague subtitle. Uh, it just seems to be based off of World War II and just this author's exploration of that uh, of these two figures and their role in Europe. That's extremely vague. I really don't know what I'm going to encounter in this, other than that I know that it's been highly praised by even people who don't even read a lot of nonfiction, who pick this up and are impressed by it. So, and then we come to the last book that's not on the main shelf, and then we can get to the main shelf itself. This is a work of Canadian history. This is Rise to Greatness, The History of Canada from the Vikings to the Present by Conrad Black. And it's just a mammoth book, even though I believe, well, I know for sure, like, the thickness here is deceiving, because it is a hardcover. If you take the actual book itself, it is about 1,000 pages. Uh, just over 1,000 pages up. So I guess maybe this isn't deceiving, but it looks like it's like 1,500 pages. Like it looks really big. Uh, but uh, but it's a big fat history of Canada, which to most people would be boring. And to me, it is kind of boring too, because Canadian history really isn't that interesting. Um, but I'm Canadian, and I need to bolster up on my Canadian history, and this is one way to do it. I found this at a thrift store too, because I'm very glad that I did, because I think I paid like $5, $6 for it when brand new this hardcover would have cost me $50. So a very good deal there too. And also Conrad Black is an interesting figure because I believe I looked him up, and I believe he was rubbing elbows with some of the political figures that of his day, and he was much older when he wrote this, near the end of his life, and he so it makes me think there's maybe a sort of conflict of interest in the more contemporary figures that he would be writing about at the very end of this volume. So I'm very interested to see how that plays out. So when he moves from the realm of history to the realm of being a player in that history, or um, um, at least seeing that history firsthand. So yeah, it says that he so he's part of U.S. history as well, but he's also a member of um, so he's British history. I don't know. I'm reading the bio, the author bio here, and it's kind of confusing. Um, but anyways, it looks like he was rubbing elbows with American history too. So why would he write a history of Canada? Um, but anyways, I'll figure that out when I actually get to that book sometime. Now getting to the actual shelf itself, 16 minutes in, I'm going to go from left to right. And it's just going to be big history books. Um, so we start off with The Guns of Last Light by Rick Atkinson. This is his third book in his Liberation trilogy. This is the War in Western Europe, 1944 to 45. This is his third book. I found this one used for like $4 or something. Just this perfect edition hardcover. And again, I'm not usually interested in the World War, but I've been finding these really attractive books that cover that period, and I figure I might as well give it a try. And I do have the other two volumes of his trilogy, the first and second volume, both as ebooks. So I have the whole set, just this third one is in a physical copy. Then we move on to the aforementioned Richard Overy. This is his book on the dictators. This is Hitler's Germany and Stalin's Russia. And it's just a big book on these two figures, and I guess a study, in a sense, of dictators and their evil and their influence and how they commanded people despite their evil. And it'll be a riveting and blood-coiling read because, man, when there's dictators in power, it really does get the blood boiling. But anyways, then we move on to Helen Rappaport. This is her Caught in the Revolution. And this one is about the Russian Revolution. It says Petrograd, Russia, 1917, a world on edge. And I believe this is a study of uh, foreigners who were in Russia at the time of the Russian Revolution. Um, so it'll be very interesting to get her account on this. Because the Russian Revolution is a part of history that I'm quite fascinated by. A lot more than, say, the actual war, like World War One, which the Russian Revolution kind of happened right in the midst of that. Then we come to a old book. This is sort of like a textbook, and it doesn't have a dust jacket. It's A History of the Modern World by R.R. Palmer, and there's no cover there other than you can. Oh yeah, there we go. You can sort of make out the words there, but then you can see that on the spine, and it's well worn out because it is basically a textbook. And it's got underlines in it too. So this is a textbook that has been used. And there's even some annotation in there. But it's perfectly readable. It's just that it's a very old book, with an old book smell, which I'm not actually a big fan of. I'm not that big of a fan of the old book smell. But anyways, this is A History of the Modern World. So this would be like from like 1500 to whenever the present day that this author was writing in, which is 1955. So looks like this is like volume 1, because I believe this book ended up having subsequent volumes and even other co-authors who would update the book after the author R.R. Palmer was dead. Then we move on to, this is another comprehensive history. This is From Dawn to Decadence, 1500 to the Present, and it's by Jacques Barzun. And it's 500 Years of Western Cultural Life. And I've heard good things about this book. Like, it's very readable and it's very entertaining for a history book. So I was glad to find this hardcover of this book. So I think what I'm going to do is that, since I'm running out of room, I'm going to put all these back on the shelf, and I'll just take out and replace, I don't think, the book. So then we get to another book on that subject that I talk about how I'm more interested in what happens before and after a war. So this is before World War I. This is Margaret Macmillan's The War That Ended Peace. This is The Road to 1914, which of course is the start of World War I. So this is her book right before that. She also has a book on just called 1919, which is about the aftermath of World War I. So, but this is the only book of hers that I have on that subject. I don't actually have her 1919. I've seen it used before, but it's not really been that interesting to me. I'd rather give this a try first and see how I get along with the author. Though I do have some of her other books. I have her book on war, which is a more recent book, fairly recent. And then I have her book on like an little essay on history writing, or what history is. Anyways, then we move on to a bit of an anomaly on this shelf. Not a specific meaty work of history on like a war or a cultural time period. Well, actually, this is a cultural time period, but not like a sprawling history or whatever, or a war history. This is a cultural history. This is Modernism by Peter Gay. It's the lure of hearsay, um, and it's just his study of the idea of modernism in the arts, at least. Modernism has many different meanings, but I don't believe he goes into. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't really know exactly what he's going to be covering here, but so it looks like, based on the table of contents, it looks like he actually goes through modernism in the arts. So we got painting and sculpture, prose and poetry, music and dance, architecture and design, drama and movies. That's like the heart of the book. And then we move on to more World War. This is the Deluge by Adam Tooze. This is The Great War, America, and the remaking of the global order, 1916 to 1931. So I've heard a lot of great things about this author, and I was very glad to find this very attractive hardcover. And it's also quite lightweight for a hardcover. For example, like this hardcover is stiffer and more heavy, but then this one here is quite lightweight. And so I don't know if it's just the different paper quality or whatever, but it's would make for an enjoyable read. Then we have a book by Brendan Sims. This is Europe, The Struggle for Supremacy, 1453 to the present. And this is a beautiful naked hardcover, where if you see that illustration goes all the way around, and it's printed there on the book. This is the Allen Lane book printing, where they usually publish like a seminal work of history in the Allen Lane line in the UK, and then eventually it'll come out in that Penguin orange spine squat paperback. And so I got the actual hardcover. I found this one used for just like $5 or something. So very happy about that. And it's also, of course, a book on Europe and a study on that 500 years of modern history in Europe. which is right in my subject matter or interest in subject matter. Then we have another famous book on uh, the Cold War. This is Post-War by was it Tony Judt, and it's a history of Europe since 1945. This book is so popular that it actually seems to transcend its subject matter, where people who don't usually read nonfiction are reading or praising and reading this book. So I was very glad to find a nice paperback used. I still have the sticker on there. If you can tell, it's $3. The only problem is that the spine is actually faded, so you can't really see uh, the title there. But it was like that when I purchased it. It's not like I've had these books sitting in the sun all the time. And then we move on to another massive hardcover. It's a history of Europe, but it's not the kind that you'd be used to. This is From Peoples into Nations, and it's a history of Eastern Europe by John Connolly, and it's just a big fat history of Eastern Europe, which is um, usually when you think of Europe, we think of Western Europe, where it's like a lot more prosperous, a lot more democratic, and more stable. And then you got Eastern Europe, where you got the all the conflicts in borders and nationalities between people, and you also got the encroachment, especially after World War II, of the Soviet Union into Eastern Europe, and basically how they split Europe in half after World War II, and then the Cold War, and the conflict involved in there, and that's why I think that the title of this is very apt. It's From People into Nations, and it's just a big fat hardcover of a study of this era of this part of Europe where I guess doesn't usually get its own dedicated histories, or if you get like just a general book on Europe, say like this book, like how much does this cover Eastern Europe other um, than compared to Western Europe? And so almost certainly it covers Western Europe a lot more. And then we come to a book on a battle. This is The Crucible of War. This is by Fred Anderson, and it's the 7 Years' War and the Fate of Empire in Britain or British North America, 1754 to 1766. And if you're not familiar, this is actually an important conflict for Canadian history, because I mean at this point it was British history, but usually in Canadian history classes, in at least high school, you do cover this period, not in super detail, but it's at least mentioned as an important milestone in pre-Canadian history. So having a big book on that subject really does uh, create a lot of interest for me. And of course, you got that famous cover of the dying general on the cover there, which is very appropriate. And then we move on to more Russian history. This is the Russian Revolution. This is A People's Tragedy: The Russian Revolution by Orlando Figes. Is it Figes or Figs or whatever? Anyways, this is the 100th anniversary edition. So I believe this book came out in like the 90s, and then this paperback here is the book reissued for the 1970 or 2017 for the 100th anniversary, and so you have a beautiful new cover, which I believe is better than the original cover from the 90s, which is like a faded photograph or something. But yeah, it's a big fat history. Like it's huge, and I don't think the type font is all that big either. So looking forward to this very much so. And then we come to another massive paperback. This is The Transformation of the World: A Global History of the 19th Century, and this is by Jorgen Osterhammel, and it has this is a translated work of scholarship, and I want to give the translator credit too. This is by Patrick Kammerer, who translated this entire work, this massive work, which was originally published in German. And of course, you have a very important blurb here for people on BookTube. And and I'm going to read actually. That blurb is marvelous. It's a demonstration of how thoroughly serious scholarship can beat popular history at its own game. That's a great quote for this book. I've not actually read this book, but it makes me excited to read this book. Yeah, so it's world history of the 19th century, and I think that kind of perspective, where it's not just Europe, it's not just, say, North America or the West, um, it's a world history of that huge period of time where you got increasing, like, it's after the Enlightenment and you got increasing technology. So after the Enlightenment and in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, you got just rapid change and rapid progress at just a blinding rate. Just in, like, for example, if you take any subject matter, say medicine, from the beginning of the 19th century to the very end, it's like night and day. And you can take that for anything else, like any of the other sciences, any of the even literature, just any subject matter that you can think of, and that 100 years from beginning to end of the 19th century, there was more change, more progress than like the previous 200-300 years, uh, almost without exception. And I think that's fascinating. So then we come to another history of Europe. This is Europe, a History by Norman Davies, and just this enormous work. And then we got the author there, and of course the sticker that I paid $1.50 for this enormous work of the history of Europe. And I don't know what to expect, other than, of course, European history, but uh, yeah, I'm very much excited for all these books on European history. And then we got one more book on this shelf, and it's another monster. This is Dreadnought by Robert Massie, and it's Britain, Germany, and the Coming of the Great War, and just this wonderful hardcover, enormous book. And I believe, I don't know if this actually covers the war in its totality, but it is very much, um, no, this looks like it's just the lead up to the war. It doesn't actually look like it. It covers the war itself, so, and which is perfectly fine with me, because that's what I prefer anyways in my histories, so very glad to have this. And heard that the author is type of author that you just cannot miss. And so that's that shelf, BookTube. Thanks for watching. I'm glad that this was manageable. I'm just over 30 minutes. I'm glad that it's not like a 40-minute video, so I'll leave it there for now, and I'll see you on the next shelf.